Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And today we're talking about Colette, which is based on true events.
Yes, it's the biographical story of the famous French writer, the most famous female writer of all time,
Gabrielle Colette.
Whom our listeners might best know as the person who imagined Gigi, the Oscar-winning film by Vincente Minnelli with Leslie Caron playing Gigi. I think that's really where most English-speaking people would know Colette from.
Right. But the film concentrates on an earlier part of her life.
Yes.
When she became the writer that she
That's
became.
right.
When she was writing Claudine à l'école and the series of Claudine books.
Yes.
She didn't publish them under her own name. They were written under her husband's name, Willie,
Yes.
who was a brand. And, you know, the film was not quite what I expected. I guess I expected the story of how she took her name for herself, you know? And that's not quite what the film does. It has an element of that, but actually it becomes a kind of sexual kind of power drama in some respects. And it's very much about the relationship between Willie and Claudine, Willie and Colette. Willie's played by Dominic West, Colette's played by Keira Knightley, and they're kind of developing sort of sexual games, relationships, kind of and the way the way that their relationship is one of business, as well as kind of affection to some degree.
Well, to a great degree.
So it's kind of interesting, but I also think it's got an abysmal script, and I think it's for stupid people.
I think that's harsh. I think the film, I found it actually surprisingly entertaining and watchable, though it's not a good film. I think, we need to be clear on that. And there were certain things that, as I was watching, really bothered me. So, I think the film aims to be a queer film, i.e. akin to some of the new queer cinema of the early 1990s, but actually without the politics or the surprise or the confrontational in-your-face inventiveness and kind of rage in a way. So it's a very sedate kind of look. I also think it's a very male look. So, it might be a very gay male look, but actually I would have appreciated a more female look at Colette. After all, she's absolutely central to a certain kind of cultural lesbian imaginary, throughout all of the middle of the last century. And she was kind of known for that. I mean, part of what the film tells us is that people know that she wrote the Claudine books, even though it's supposed to be a secret, because it's a sensibility that, can only come from a woman, that can only come from her, right? So a film that's so much about, a character who embodied a certain kind of female desire, femininity, a different kind of, femaleness, womanhood, right?
Well, the film talks about how through the books she gave voice to girls who were between girlhood and womanhood.
That's right.
And kind of enjoying a sexual awakening and developing and all that kind of stuff. Which is something that Willie would not have been able to imagine.
Yes.
It clearly had to have come from a woman. Those
so I was a bit disappointed that they couldn't find a female director for it. That's basically
when you say it's got a gay male sensibility or gay male aesthetic, whatever, you say it because obviously the director is a gay man.
Yes.
As opposed to just having.
I normally, I'm not an essentialist. I don't think that, films about women necessarily need to be directed by women. But actually, there is something lacking in this film about that.
I think it's got a very very unimaginative, plain look, and I think it actually tries to do things with the direction, but I think they're incredibly banal.
Yes.
And this is also where I think the script is garbage, because it doesn't let anything go unsaid. It starts off with these metaphors. So for instance, so right at the beginning when Willie comes into Colette's life, well, not exactly comes into her life. They've known each other before that, but where you first see them together, he's come back from Paris. She lives in Burgundy, and he gives her this snow globe with the Eiffel Tower in, which at the time, this is the late 1800s, the Eiffel Tower is new.
Yes, modern.
Exactly, and he says, "What's this?" And he says, "Turn it upside down." And as she does, obviously it's a snow globe, so things start happening. And there's like this metaphor of, "Ooh, turn the world upside down," and things happen. And then you jump ahead to they're married. She's trying to get into this dress that he's bought for her that he thinks she'll look fantastic in, and she says it's suffocating me. You know, I wonder if he's kind of suffocating her in her life. You know, and then they go to this party where he's showing off and kind of exaggerating himself, and she's not very happy there. And she sees this tortoise that's diamond encrusted. It's a live tortoise. It's been decorated by the hosts, and you know that's a kind of perfectly fine sort of visual metaphor. Like it relates to the dress. You know, kind of the tortoise is this pet that's been kind of tarted up to be shown off, and similarly the dress that he wanted to put on, same sort of thing. He wants to show her off, and she's not happy there, which is sort of fine. But then the film doesn't let it go unsaid. It doesn't let it just stay there. She says in dialogue, "I felt like the tortoise." Yeah. There's things like that when I say I think it's a film for stupid people. It holds your hand with that sort of stuff all the way through. Really,
yes.
I found it dislikable in that respect.
It's quite stilted. I didn't find it dislikable because, you know, I mean, this is really like middlebrow cinema, right? And I kind of like it. You know, I like films about famous writers. I like the milieu. I like the representation of that milieu. I like looking at the furniture and the dresses and the country houses. There are pleasures to be had in that. But I think it's very stilted filmmaking. And some things, like I said, you know, they feel out of place. So, for example, it's amazing how many performances that take place in salons are done by men dressed up in drag, or, you know, men voicing women's parts, or, you know, so there's that whole attempt to be cool and queer, and, you know, but actually it just seems stodgy and unimaginative and kind of retrograde at this moment, actually. It has no surprise, it has no shock, it doesn't seem to be making any statement. And on the other hand, it's detracting, you know, from the main subject, which is Colette.
Well, there was that thing with the mime.
Yes.
That the mime is mouthing a song.
Yes.
And he's in kind of a very pasty mime makeup. And then as the camera tracks around, it shows the woman who's actually singing the part that he's miming to. And, you know, again, there's a metaphor of she's the voice behind the man who's pretending. I suppose,
actually, you're right. I hadn't thought of it that way. I just thought, what a stupid thing.
No, I noticed that. I noticed that immediately. In fact, I noticed that even before the camera revealed that a woman was singing, because it was obvious. You know, I mean, it's clear.
Yeah.
And but to be fair, at least they didn't actually say in dialogue, "Oh, I'm just like him."
Yes.
Or I'm just like her.
I think, to me, the film is very much worth watching. Because of Dominic West and Keira Knightley. I think Dominic West is fantastic. I think I've been despairing about him because actually I haven't liked him in a lot of things, you know, including on stage. I went to see him in Les Liaisons Dangereuses, and, you know, I thought he was like, you know, fat and stodgy and, you know, unlike the Valmont that I wanted and expected. And I think I might have also seen him do restoration comedy. I'm not sure now. But anyway, I haven't really loved him in anything since The Wire. And I also saw him in the new Lara Croft film, Tomb Raider film. And I didn't like him there either. And so, you know, I'm not necessarily like a huge fan, and I just thought he was fantastic in this.
He's got the right look and the right tempo and the right tenor of everything, and he starts off. He's got this kind of wild sort of moustache and beard that tells you it's like a vaudeville magician's type that says, "Don't trust me." Yes, you know, how can you possibly?
He's like a satyr, you know, somebody who, I mean, he's bearded, he's slightly overweight, he's really into all the sensuous pleasures. He's fun, he's witty, he's selfish, you know, kind of, he conveys all of that, really, and he's just marvellous.
And I like the way that the film constructs him as a kind of, like a Thomas Edison or Steve Jobs type, where, you know, you would imagine. I mean, okay, so Edison and Steve Jobs, they were kind of engineers and things, but what he's doing is running an art factory.
Yes.
You know, like these people write novels and they go under his name, and later on he describes Willy as a brand.
Yes.
You know, not even as kind of himself.
It's still what happens today.
Yeah. But you know, the idea that it is actually described as a factory. He says very early on, the factory's running well. You know, stuff like that. And Colette is part of that factory early on, and she's talks of herself as under house arrest.
Yes.
You know, and she scratches Willy's name into the glass like scratching the time into the prison wall, something. You know, the days past. And you know, I kind of like that. I kind of thought that was interesting because actually the first time you see him write anything is much later on in the film when Colette ups and leaves, and he says, I'm sick of this. I can't do it. It's terrible." And you get the whole thing. It reminded me a little bit of his performance and the construction of him of The Greatest Showman. You know, again, of the kind of the smile that covers everything. Although in The Greatest Showman, I think you're actually meant to believe him a little bit. Whereas in this, there is a marked difference the whole way through. The film is all about kind of identity and what you show and what you actually are, and that's a big part of it. You know, him, it's the version of you that you show completely masks who you are. I mean, that's completely central to the film. That idea, you know, hiding, portraying, you know, showing one thing.
Yes, well, I mean, you know, he's basically taking credit for all of his wife's work. So I think, you know, there's an argument here about patriarchy. I mean, basically, you know, she has no rights. So, you know, their house is bought with her money, and, you know, she makes it, he spends it. The only control that she can exercise over it is by leaving him, really. So, which is kind of where the end of the film brings us to. But I thought the storytelling was so poor that I have never seen a post-film explanation as long as this one. Right, the film ends, and then you have, 7 intertitles telling you...
No. There's only 2 or 3.
No, there's more than that. There's the one about the guy not burning the books.
Yeah.
You know, there's the other one about her publishing a book that was, you know, became a success. There's the other one about, you know, her being France's most famous writer in history. You know, and there's the other one about her writing 30 odd more books. There's at least those, right? That's a lot. Yeah. You know, so
I didn't pay attention, to be honest, because it was just I just thought this is for stupid people. It is. Like, you can imagine, there are points where the film even not alludes to exactly, but certainly has echoes of things like Vertigo and Gone Girl. The similarity to Vertigo is in Colette's appearance being changed to look like Claudine, right? Yes. The thing about cutting her hair, you know, and people and he says, "I'd like you to dress up as the schoolgirl." You know? There's that, and then in Gone Girl, you've got the whole thing about, I forget the woman's name in Gone Girl, but it's the thing about the storybooks written as, you know, based on her, and the storybooks are kind of the perfect version of her. You know, the thing is, and these are kind of these mad sort of psychosexual power dramas, which are amazing, and you kind of feel like there's a version of this that was like that and had some really interesting stuff, and then like an ITV producer said, "Yes, but will they understand it?"
No, I mean,
it feels dumbed down.
I don't. I mean, it's not a good film, so let's get that out of the way. But actually, I think what it does is more complex and interesting than you're making it out to be. So, you know, Colette is Claudine. We see her, you know, in the country with her mother. She's that kind of life. She tells the story to her husband. The books become successful. All of a sudden, there are Claudines kind of coming out of everywhere. So actually, these Claudines are stealing her identity as much as her husband, right? And then she is transformed into the imaginary Claudine, who is now being played on stage by someone who she's made to dress as, right? And then that kind of mirroring then extends through society as a whole, right? So, I mean, I thought all of that stuff was quite interesting. I also thought that whole stuff about having an open marriage and coming to terms with it and creating different spheres of influence, and one being more honest, and in spite of this open relationship that relies on a kind of honesty, the guy always lying, so the selfishness of, always kind of wanting more and manipulating more and doing so under the guise of openness. I thought all of that was quite interesting.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. And you don't see that, in cinema very often. So I think there are ideas that are being discussed, that was not...
That was, I think, where the film became interesting to me. I mean, I found it very banal until you got to the point where instead of Colette being just the victim of her husband, she starts to kind of participate and engage in this sort of sexual business relationship where where it really first begins is that they are both having an affair with the same woman.
It starts off as her having an affair, and then he begins one behind her back.
Exactly. And then she discovers him, and they have this kind of coded conversation using the characters in the book. She said, because the books are based on their actual exploits. I mean, you even have it's very, very explicit, where Willie is saying to her, you must use this. You must use this in your books. She says, no, I'm not going to. It's private, So they have that conversation where she basically says, I've discovered you, and then they kind of become open about it together, to the point where she's later on they're kind of live-in lovers. Maybe not live-in, but their lovers are with them at the house in the countryside, playing with the dog, and they're sat together, and he's going, "Yeah, I'm fucking her, and she's fucking her," and.
But it's more complex than that because.
But the point is, that's where
I'm fucking the Claudine. The young Claudine that I initially kind of fell in love with, which is now, the imaginary production of, the wife, who I'm also who I can only sleep with if she puts on a Claudine outfit as well. So actually, he's fixated on this kind of...
image.
Yeah, root image. It's kind of the image of the young, novice, country girl, unsophisticated, unspoiled. So and he transforms everyone in his world, into that, and he can only be like sexual with that image. I mean, he's impotent otherwise, really. So I thought all of that was interesting. I thought Keira Knightley was great, and kind of not quite done justice to. Because I think she has moments where she's extraordinarily beautiful, and daring, actually, in her performance. And kind of the camera and direction let her down. Yeah. I think she's often not photographed to advantage, though it's very difficult to film her in a way that she's not beautiful. But, kind of, from some angles, her features can come across quite harsh. And the film is guilty of that. And then all of the dance scenes, which actually I thought she was quite good at, really. They could have been made more exciting, more lyrical, more expressive than they were. They were very, very statically filmed. And actually that moment, where she's doing the music hall and she rips off her top so that you show one breast, I thought that was so badly done. I mean, it's meant to be kind of theatrical, and slightly old-fashioned and so on and shocking. But really, it's almost like the way it's filmed, it's just, I think in a middle shot, a mid-length shot from rather far away. And it's just like, it loses all impact. It's very
all of the direction, I think, is illustrative rather than expressive. It's just, it's put a script on screen, as opposed to actually really kind of investigating the text and making something of it, I think.
One of the things looking at the credits that I thought was so interesting is, there were a lot of women's names on them, right? So, we mentioned Christine Vachon, who's a very, very famous producer, but actually there was all other producers who were also women. You mentioned that the screenwriter of
one of the screenwriters is Rebecca Lenkovich, who co-wrote Disobedience, which we loved.
Yes.
And also co-wrote Ida by Paul Pawlikowski.
Yes, I love that as well.
And I found that remarkable that this script was partially responsible.
Yeah.
Or she was partially. I mean, you have no idea kind of who played what parts, but obviously there are kind of certain similarities, at least at a very basic level, between this and Disobedience. But I thought Jesus, what happened?
Yes. Well, there were moments that, the reason why I'm bringing up nuclear cinema so often is because Christine Vachon was such a central figure, but also because those films did things like that were disjunctive, or it melded, past and present, which this one actually doesn't do. But, having drag or things like that, right? But what it also had was some very stodgy performances, like kind of, or moments that stood out as stiff and stilted, but they were nonetheless compensated by a kind of, a liveliness that came from a certain kind of rage or energy or a desire for representation. This film has the stiffness or stiltedness, of those films without the energy. And there are some performances that I think are just like unbelievably bad, right? So, and actually they're central to the story. So I think, the rich woman who Colette has her first affair with, who she shares with the husband, right, who's meant to have like the southern accent, she's just terrible, and actually the butch woman, who she gets on, Missy, such a central character. And of course the look of the performer playing Missy is fantastic, but actually she's not expressive enough, so moments which are meant to carry a great deal of emotional weight, like when she says I love you and Colette doesn't respond, or then the moment in the train where Colette finally responds or returns the I love you, kind of there's no dynamic interplay between the performers, right? So you can believe Keira Knightley's Colette, and then it hits like a brick wall in the other performer.
Yeah, it turns into a very flat moment. Those things. But I what I liked about Missy was I kind of liked and disliked that. So I like the kind of representational aspect. I like the inclusive aspect. That although Colette is obviously the central character to the entire film, there is a range of sort of experience that is allowed to be kind of expressed, and hers is particularly one of them, Missy's, as this kind of not transgender, but sort of very androgynous figure. Well, transgender as well, because later on she's referred to as a he, and Colette is very specific about that, saying it's him, not her, and this is very early on when you first see him. It's wearing trousers, and it's like, and the guy sat with Colette says, well, he's descended from a Tsar on one side and Louis XIV on the other or something, which is how she gets away with it. So, and she's a very interesting presence, and I like the fact that she's given space.
That's a good word, presence. She does have a very interesting presence.
Yeah, and she / he is given a voice as well. Is allowed to actually express kind of his experience. It's not just sort of. I think there is. I was talking to Laura about this just in a little bit, because she's seen the film as well, and she was saying that she felt there was a lack of historical context to the presentation of Missy and kind of the LGBT experience, and I think that's true to an extent, but I think it's pretty clear what society makes of Missy.
Yes, I didn't have a problem with that, and
also what Missy makes of her place in society and the way society sees her.
Yes,
so I found that interesting, and I liked the level to which the kind of the status within the kind of film that Missy was afforded. That she was slightly more than a supporting player. You felt there was a little more to her than that. I don't know. I think that's one of the better things the film does.
Well, I like the character and I like the presence. I'm just sorry that the performer who had that presence nonetheless was not an actress.
Yeah, that's probably. I think that's probably fair. I think my problems do ultimately all come down to the script and direction. I think the actors deserve better than what they give.
I think I would agree with that, and not just the actors, everything else, because in some way, I mean, I love the look of the film, and the set design and the costumes and so on. They really evoke that period. I really loved seeing all of that. Right, it's just that it's so poorly directed, really.
Yeah, and written.
And written.
Well, it has that thing. There's a great thing in Futurama where Fry puts on this play, and it's kind of in equal parts amazing and terrible, and the dialogue is awful. And at one point, the robot devil jumps up on stage and says, "You can't just have your characters announce how they feel. That makes me feel angry." This film has a lot of that. Like that there's the final speech that or monologue that Colette has, where she basically gives Willie kind of what for and tells him, "This is it, we're done, I'm leaving, and this is what you've done to me in my life." She delivers it fantastically, no blinking, just stares him down, and she's great, Keira Knightley. But the actual dialogue it's the most obvious. That's what the film is. It's obvious pretty much all the way through. Apart from those moments where actually it does occasionally complicate things. The film lurches between very obvious, banal things and weird things. You think, God, what's going on here? Like the things that happen on stage. You go, oh, wait a minute, I wasn't. This is a bit different. The film does lurch, but I don't think it ever complicates things intelligently enough.
Yes. For me...
Or consistently enough. It's inconsistent.
Well, I would agree with all of that, but I would also add that the film's biggest sin for me is showing the lesbian sex scenes so dispassionately. It's like you have Dominic West on the one hand, who just gleefully dives into every bed and is, lascivious and lustful and enjoys it all. And then you have, like, these sex scenes between the women that are just, like, so careful and no tongue. And, like, they're so dispassionate and careful and, and actually I think it kind of destroys part of the message and feeling of the film. Kind of Colette's love for women is a driving force, right? And you're kind of told that, or well, you're not even told that actually. I think it's kind of you can deduce that, but you definitely don't see it.
Yeah, it's too safe. It's too tame.
Yes.
All that stuff. I think it's a film that feels bowdlerized.
Yes.
Pasteurized. Like there is a really interesting, dirty, alive version of this film that I think has been dulled.
Yes.
Somewhere, I was very disappointed. The trailer looked fantastic. I thought this is going to be really something. And I
don't know. I mean, I think one of the things that I do want to say is I was thinking about this earlier today, and I haven't looked it up, but just from memory, and actually I will. Let me look it up right now. I think part of the problem is the choices that Keira Knightley herself makes. She makes quite safe choices. She's got a real middle-brow sensibility. So she's appeared in Jane Austen. She was Anna Karenina. She was the Duchess. She was in Atonement, which is a literary adaptation. Right, so it's like these adaptations of literary classics are the kinds of thing that she specializes in, and so actually she's
a bit Merchant Ivory.
Yeah, but with people who are not as good as Merchant Ivory, really. So I if I were her agent, I'd tell her, you need to work with better filmmakers and something kind of, raw. You need to like leave the middle brow behind you. You've done enough, kind of.
She did the Cronenberg, didn't she? Dangerous Method.
Yes.
The Psycho, what's it, Jung and Freud one.
Okay, I haven't seen that.
But that does appear to be more or less the only slightly out there one.
Never Let Me Go, Atonement, the King Arthur, Love Actually. What's the Jane Austen? Oh, that was a very early one. I forget now. Pride
and Prejudice.
Did she do Pride and Prejudice? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah, you're right.
I mean, it's part of a pattern, isn't it?
With that said, she's grown on me a lot. I used to really not like her.
Oh, I love her.
And I used to think she can't act. And I think that was actually probably true. I think if you go back and look at her earlier films, I think.
But I loved her first film, the football one. I loved that film.
Beckham.
Yes.
I never saw that one. But I think she's definitely improved a lot, and I think she's, you know.
Well, I think
I've started to like her more. She's become more likable to me.
I think she's become very good, and to me, like, I remember seeing Anna Karenina, which actually was quite imaginatively staged, and I thought, you know, she was as beautiful as any movie star diva. You know, she was like Garbo or Dietrich in that film. She's just kind of filmed like her face is a work of art in it, really. So, and I'm
sure she worked hard on it.
Well, I'm sure she had a whole team working hard on it. Nonetheless, she could pull that off, whereas others can't. But you know, it's just a very safe, very English middlebrow filmography, and you know, she needs to change management and take more chances. I mean, because basically, you know, I think she's been doing the Pirates of the Caribbean films as like her Hollywood, you know, cash films, you know, but then to actually spend that capital, you know, on making The Duchess or you know, Atonement or things like that is like a waste of capital, you know. So kind of literary adaptations are not what you spend that kind of box office capital on. So anyway, that's just, you know, my message to Keira.
I hope she's listening. So yeah, I was let down by Colette.
Yes, I must say I enjoyed watching it, even though it's not a very good film.
It's going to be shown on ITV soon. That's the, you know, that's the damning indictment of it. For me.
Yeah, and it won't lose much, you know. So if you can wait, do. All right. Well, thank you very much for listening.
Yeah.
We are Eavesdropping at the Movies, and we are
on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much.